Hello, future people. Welcome to Getting Tabled. I'm Jason the Bruce, and today I'm coming to you with an exclusive look at one of the new books coming out for Bot War. So, those of you that are following the Bot War community will know that one of the incoming books for next month, February 1st, is the Red Cannoneers. Now, generally speaking, these digital books have been dripping out slowly but surely, giving a little bit of an update to the armies that are involved. Most of them are coming with new models, variations on the themes that you already find, and generally just adding something a little extra to the game itself. Anthony has kindly given this to me to have a look at. It is worth noting, I don't play Valiants. That's not going to change. I don't have any existing bias there because it's just not an army that I'm interested in playing. Not because it's just, I kind of like the villains in this. They're just fun. So, I have no bias in that regard. So, let's get across and let's have a look. Sorry to interrupt the video, but I want to tell you about the competition that we're running through our Patreon. For every month of support you give our Patreon, from now until April next year, you will receive one entry into the competition that we're running to win a Shaltari fleet for Drop Fleet Commander. That includes a Shaltari Dreadnought, a Shaltari Starter Set, a Shaltari Frigates box, and a Shaltari Cruisers box. All of this will be sent to one winner. This winner will be drawn at random on our 4th anniversary, which is recorded at the beginning of April. For us to be allowed to send this to you, you need to fit 2 categories. You must be living in a country where it's legal for me to post you something from Australia. You also must be living in a country where it is legal to win competitions. If you do not live in a country that meets these criteria, then I do apologise. There's nothing that I'll be able to do, and I will be forced to redraw it. Please consider supporting us. We'd really appreciate it. All of this was purchased with my own money. So, here we are with the Valiants, Red Cannoneers faction guide. So this is an expansion on the Valiants. It's a faction within the faction itself. First things first, I really do love this front cover artwork. The artists that he has doing these are really, really good. So, the opening with this, we start with some images of the faction itself. Now, these guys are not involved. We're looking at these white and red guys over here. The first thing you'll notice is that this guy is very familiar. Yes, that is General Duke given a repaint. You'll find that with quite a few of these miniatures, like they're existing miniatures that have been given new life. Now, this new version is called Maximus. Because what you're going to find very much with this is it's giving a refresh to models that you may not actually find reasons to be using. There are crossover as well. Not everybody is just a new character, but it's an old mini. There is legitimate people that are just Cadmia, for example, appears in this as well as other places. And her card reflects that. It's the same person. But otherwise, characters that don't see the table as much, in this you're given a new reason to look at them, I think is probably the fairest thing to say. Okay, and here we come across probably the first thing. Now, it's worth noting that it's not until 19 where we actually start seeing something other than the character bios. If you're not someone that gets into the lore of Bot War, you might struggle a little bit with this. And not all miniature gamers are into lore. I do certainly enjoy it, but not everybody does. So you may struggle a little bit with that. We will be going through it. I'm not reading everything today, but there is quite a bit here. He has spent quite a bit of time on this. And then we come into the actual bios. So Road Knight is the general. I quite like this artwork. This bot is really, really cool. I quite like this. Heatsink is the guy that you saw on the front page. Again, I quite like the look of this. I do like the fact that he actually does say what the alt forms of these guys are, which for most of them we've never seen them in miniature form. We will at some point. It just hasn't happened at this stage. It's going to be interesting to see. So I look at this guy, and he's a tracked battle fortress, and I just look at that, and I just don't see how that becomes. I mean, I can see the tracks back here, but I don't see how it becomes a tracked vehicle, which is just interesting. So he's a supercar. I mean, obviously I can see that because you can see the hubs and you can see the wheels and stuff. So we got Bandit. Like, I'm not reading all of this. So here's Cadmia. She's appeared in pretty much everything related to the Valiants at this stage. Code Red is somebody that we've seen before, I believe. Forge Fire. Dustwind. I want to say Riles? Could be Rilesy. Not one of my favourite designs. It's very fembot in design, which is fine. It's just not an aesthetic that I enjoy personally. I kind of like I like these where it's a little bit more individual. Merge. We have Humvee. Doubleback. He appeared in a little bit of artwork that we saw at the start. I really like the mini for this one. And then here is Maximus. So Maximus, it's General Duke, but with a different coat of paint. It is supposed to be a different character. You'll notice this with a lot of 80s toys and so forth. They do this quite regularly. So it is actually like the things that inspired this. It's taking notes from that. So I quite like that they're doing that. And General Duke is someone that doesn't really see the table after people get out of the starter set. Not a lot, at least, anyway. So it's good to see that people are getting a new lease on life, so to speak. This is the big thing with the Battlefield defense wall. This is a big thing for the army. Nobody else has access to this. Unless you want to say the coils have their defensive tower and something else. Generally speaking, I don't like these things in a game. When I have to pay for terrain, usually they're things that I don't enjoy. I have heard feedback from Coils players that the pieces of terrain that come with their forces are considered to be completely useless on the table. So that's certainly not a good thing. I don't really have an opinion. I haven't seen them on the table because the people that I play with don't use them. Obviously, nobody's used this yet, but we will be looking at the rules for this. So we will get to that when we get there. So throughout this section, you're going to come across this is the miniature showcase. You're showing them on the actual battlefield with the actual people. You're seeing images with the infestors. This is them against the coils. I can't remember what the name of this faction is off the top of my head. Here we are with the deceivers and so on and so forth. I mean, this is something that's important for every thing like this. There always needs to show off the minis, so it's good that they're there. And here we are into what is essentially the thing that you're paying for. If you're buying this for one of two reasons. Access to more lore and access to new rules. So, the Red Cannoneers faction rules. So, in order to be able to get access to these, you can only take Red Cannoneers. You can't have any allies. You can't have any sellswords. So long as you only take Red Cannoneers, then you get access to this. So you get custom weapon systems. The Red Cannoneers spend a lot of time cleaning and improving their weapon systems, which gives them the edge in a firefight. Red Cannoneers' short range is increased to 11 inches instead of the normal 10. Marksman training. Road Knight believes that every Red Cannoneer should be a marksman, so has adopted a disciplined training regime for the Red Cannoneers. All models may re-roll 1 purple die per turn when using a short-ranged attack. Certainly good. I don't think I like that. And I'll explain why a little because I don't think they need it. Yeah. Okay, into the defense wall. Now, I have not seen the mini for this in its full yet. So it's going to be interesting to see how this actually looks in person. The design of it aesthetically is obviously quite nice, but it's going to be interesting to see what this actually physically looks like. I imagine it's going to be a fairly simple looking piece, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Now, the big thing with this is that this does not actually activate on its own. So there's no strategy rating. It's not moving because it's a building. It has ranged attack. There's no close action. It has 3 shields and it has 6 hit points. Its special rules. It's a defensive platform. A friendly model positioned on the base of this model receives 2 critical dice for defense against ranged attacks, 180 degrees to its forward facing only. So if somebody comes from behind, it doesn't help. That is good. That's the way it should work because of how it's been designed. Heavy weapon. A model positioned on the base of this model may swap its ranged attack stat for this model's ranged attack stat only when targeting models in the 180 degree front arc of this model. Again, makes sense. There's a giant gun there. You could use that instead. It's more powerful than yours. Destroyed. If this model is destroyed, then any model on its base of the model takes 1 shield damage worth of dice with no shield allowed. There's 2 blank sides on a shield dice. I feel personally that probably should be 1 damage minimum. Personal opinion. Interactive terrain. This model does not use energy in any way and receives no activations of its own. So this is the big thing for this army. It's a defensive platform that you can use to increase your firepower. Like I said, I kind of feel like that destroyed thing should be a little bit more significant. The other thing is that I don't know what the base size is. I assume that it's a large base size. I assume, by the look of it, that it's probably going to be sitting on like 100 mil base, because I don't see how this is useful otherwise, because your base obviously needs to be able to fit on it. But this doesn't actually say anywhere how big the actual item is. We can judge by the fact that there's a bot there in the artwork, so it needs to at least be big enough for that model's base to fit there. Apparently it's going to have a base. I don't know what the size of the base is. It's going to be interesting to see how that comes. Understanding the stat cards. For people that are new to Bot War, obviously this is an important thing. But this also comes with the new design of the artwork, because it's something that Anthony was working on. I am actually on record of saying that I like the new design as far as the layout is concerned. I like everything apart from one thing, and it's this. This is the super ability, and the only thing you get now, rather than it telling you what it is that you have to come back and refer to this table to find what it is. I really don't like that. It makes the card hard to read. The card should tell you everything that you need to know, and it doesn't. Aesthetically, these cards are much better than the old ones. They put the old ones to shame. The old ones were okay, but that's all they were. But let's get into some actual cards. All right, so going through the actual cards, what is it that we actually have? Generally speaking, as far as your strategy rating is concerned, you've got a fairly wide range. There is a 1, there's 2s, everywhere up until 9. You've got a decent spread, so you're not going to be kind of stuck with everybody going first and then having to wait for your opponent. And you're also not having to get stuck waiting for your opponent and then all of your guys going last. Generally speaking, everybody's moving 7. That's fairly standard. That very rarely changes much in Bot War. I mean, it does here and there, but it doesn't really change much. Ranged, most people are 3. There's nobody below a 3. But there is a couple of people that have 4s. Close actions, it's generally not what they're for. It's 2, which in Bot War, honestly, isn't actually that bad. I kind of feel like there probably should be a few of them that have less than that, just personally. Because the Force doesn't really feel like it has much in the way of weaknesses. I mean, just as an example, Humvee here is only costing you 7. He's generating you 2 cubes. He still has 3 ranged and 2 close combat. He also has an ability that lets him re-roll one of those close attack dice, and he has that's insanely good value for 7 points. As opposed to 15, this guy generates 3 cubes. He has a better strategy rating, but otherwise there's not really much else that changes. He's got more hit points. There is no way that Road Knight is worth twice what Humvee is. But I think the main thing people want to look at is the defense wall. The defense wall is going to cost you 15. We've already gone through the stats, so there's no point going through this. It's not a battery. It does not generate you any cubes, so because it doesn't activate. So you can't get anything from this. It's a matter of you are choosing to use this instead of having another bot. But I am going to go through a few ideas of how, not specifically what the team I'm going to suggest, but a few ideas of how I would use these guys if you want to play with them. Before I go through that, I want to go through the upgrade cards, though, because this is where I got surprised. Power Extreme here costs you 2. Basically, the character you put this on gets an additional cube. Not a must-take, but for 2 points, if you have the extra points, you certainly are going to take it. Obviously, when the character dies, you lose that extra cube. So that's definitely good. Custom Precision is amazing. For 3, one turn per game, the model may replace all short-ranged attack dice with critical dice. So it's only 1 turn. That's nasty. That's really good for 3 points. Oh yeah, I don't rate this very highly. I would not use this personally. It's a different gun. You get a heavy caliber gun. It means you get to roll 6 dice instead of whatever your normal one is. But if at any point you roll 3 matching symbols, the example they use here is blank, but it's any. If you roll 3 matching symbols on 3 dice, basically you can't use it for the rest of the game and you take a damage that you can't avoid. I don't think it's worth the 6 points. I actually think this is every force needs to have a trap. This is very much the trap for this guy. I don't use this. It's just not worth it. High-powered blast is interesting. Basically, it means that when you're boosting an attack, when you're boosting a short-ranged attack, it means that you're boosting it with a critical rather than just an extra die. Advanced weapon chip is interesting. I kind of feel this is a little bit of a trap as well. For a long time, I couldn't really figure out why you would ever use this. I do have an idea for it, but I wouldn't take this in the list either. Basically, what it does is it swaps your ranged and your close attack. So all of these guys have a slightly less close combat as opposed to ranged. So it means that if you needed somebody in close attack, you could do that. But the strategy with these guys is very clearly to try to take them out before they get into close range. They can handle themselves if they need to in close range, but there's nobody in this force that you want to go into close range if you can avoid it. Lastly, we've got the big guns. Basically, this replaces ram attack with artillery support. Gives you options. Options are good. But strategy-wise, if you were to take these guys, if you want to use the defense wall, my suggestion, because this is going to have to be in your deployment zone and it can't move, so it needs to be placed somewhere where it has the most line of sight that it can, because it's not actually going to be that hard for your enemy to avoid this. This is the downside of any game where you have terrain like this, where you have to pay for it, and because terrain doesn't move. So this is very much, it's something that you could take. You could get a lot of use out of it, but it could also be something that you just don't get much out of it. Personally, if I'm going to be using this, I'm going to be throwing a cheaper model in there. someone like Doubleback, because that means that his 3 goes up to a 5 for his ranged attack. I would not be throwing somebody with higher dice into it. I would be throwing somebody into it that's going to get a decent bonus out of it. So, I mean, Doubleback, Merge, Apex. I mean, Merge would be good because he's getting it. And there's nothing special about Merge's attacks. So he's actually getting something useful out of it. Road Racer is quite good as well because he also gets to perform one of their actions for free. For 5, he's already got 3 cubes. Road Racer would be perfect in there. It means that you're paying 20 points in total, and then means that he's also going first, which means in theory you can hit somebody with it before they get to activate. And worst case scenario, if somebody does get close enough to him, he has Ram Attack to defend himself. He has Obscure, which means that he gets an extra shield dice if he needs to. I think someone like Road Racer would be really good to throw in there. That is the direction that I would be going. Humvee's not a bad idea either because, again, his 3 goes up to 5, so he's got plenty of dice. And if he does get stuck in a close combat, he gets the option to re-roll one of those attacks if he needs to. So that's the direction that I would be going. There's definitely some decent characters in here. There's definitely a lot that you can look at. Like I said, I have mixed opinions on the defensive wall. The downside of the defensive wall is that once it's there, you can't move it. So if you have an opponent that's worth a damn, they're just going to avoid it. Can they avoid it all the time? Probably not. Depends on what your table is like. If you have a lot of terrain, then it's not going to be that hard to avoid it. And I'm sorry, but if you're playing this army and your opponent knows it, they're not going to just say, yeah, sure, we won't have any terrain. I mean, every table needs to have some form of terrain. I don't think that a defensive wall is a must take, but I definitely think that it's something that would be worth experimenting with. Your strength is in your shooting. That's what I would be relying on. Obviously, Ram Attack is brutal. As far as the special abilities is concerned, Ram Attack is one of the best in the game. So if you have to get into close combat, you will be able to defend yourself. But I would be trying to avoid that if you can and relying on your shooting. Keeping in mind that if you can't see somebody at the beginning of your activation, you can't get in close combat anyway. So use that to your advantage while you can. That's the way that I would go. I would, depending on how many points you have left over, if you can get the custom precision in, I definitely would. Otherwise, this is a list to have fun with. I'm not saying that this is a straight-on replacement for the Valiants, because obviously that is not what this is for, but it definitely gives you something to look at. And I think like there is stuff among this that's going to be worth buying if you're a Valiants fan. I like this. Like it's $5. It's cheap. I see Games Workshop releasing updates for their armies. You get less in them for more money. If you're not someone that gets into the lore, if you don't get excited for the lore, then you may not get as excited for this. Like, if you're someone that just wants to play the game and the only thing you really care about is the stats, then maybe you won't see as much value in this as some other people will. So when it comes to these documents, they've kind of had a bit of a mixed reaction from the audience. And I kind of feel like I have a little bit of insight as to why. I'm not saying I have all of the answers. And I'm not saying that all of the reasons behind the mixed opinions are valid. I'm also not saying that they're not. I just kind of feel like I have a little bit of insight as to why these opinions are coming out. And I think it's a fair thing to talk about. Because some of these things are going to be raised again when this is released in February. When these documents started, part of the issue is that when these started, the cards that used to be available on the website for free were taken away. And it was put behind a paywall. So there's a section of the audience that look at that and they look at it as just like it's just a money grabbing thing. And I can't look at the miniatures, how they work anymore. How am I supposed to know why I want to buy it? How can I recommend it to a friend when they can't even look at how it works? I mean, the rulebook's already available for free. They can look at the rules and see if they like them. That is part of an answer. But I think the fair part of that is there should be something available to tell potential customers how a force works. And at this stage, they can't do that without buying anything, and that's legitimately not a good idea. There needs to be at least something available to tell them how a force works. Whether that be generally bonuses for how a faction works if you put them all together, whether that be teasers of certain characters' cards as part of the photos on the website. There needs to be something, just so that people can at least get something. Because for some customers, pretty miniatures are not enough. Some people want to play this game. So it's a legitimate criticism. But none of that criticism actually has anything to do with the contents of these magazines. Now, purely judging on this one, and again, I don't own Valiants. I'm never buying Valiants. It's not that I have a problem with it. It's just not the armies I want to play with. But I think there's genuine value in here. I mean, the lore in this is well written. There's a lot of detail in it. Is it something that everybody needs to know and wants to know? Well, probably not. Because not everybody enjoys lore. Not everybody cares about lore. There's plenty of people that play 40k that have never read the books because it's not what interests them. They really don't care. And if you are one of those people, there is 20-something pages here that you're just not going to care about. But this is a $5 document. I don't know how much value you expect to get from that, but I'm sorry, there's way more value in here than $5. If you have one of these that come out for a faction that you own and you want to play, especially if you have models in that faction that you haven't been playing because you don't think they're worth it on the table, I think you owe it to yourself to at least pay and look at the model rules in here, because it's possibly going to change that. I haven't read all of them. I've only looked at this one and one other one. When the Infestors book comes out, I will be buying it. A, there's new characters in it that I will want to buy. And B, some of those characters that I find aren't good, it's probably going to fix some of that. Also, maybe, just maybe, they might actually be competitive on the table, which they haven't been since they were released. I'm sorry, Anthony, but I don't understand how you think they're one of the most powerful forces in the game, because they're not. They're not even in the top 5. So, when it comes to these documents, do I recommend that you buy all of them? Not unless you want to read the lore, quite frankly. Because if you're not interested in the lore, there's no point buying it for models that you don't own. If you're a completionist, then you're already buying this anyway. If you just want to support the game and a small creator that's really not making a lot of... It's a small one-person team by somebody that's working full-time while they're trying to do this. This is not their full-time job. That's a pipe dream. If you want to support that person, it's $5. They will make more out of this than any miniatures that you buy. And there has been hours put into this. So if that's what your motivation is, you've already brought it. If you're someone that's looking at this and you don't see what the value is, then only buy the one for your force when it comes out. That's where you'll get your value from. That's where I think it's the most fair. You don't need these to play the game. Not at all. But hey, I would recommend playing it. Or you've made it through to the end of another video. Your next mission is to hit subscribe and comment down below. If you'd like to reach out to the team, consider doing that, gettingtabled@gmail.com. Consider subscribing to our Patreon. For only $2 a month, you get early access to almost every single video that we do. Our most active social media is facebook.com/gettingtabled. It's where you'll find everything first. There's also a Discord. There's an invite on screen right now. If you type that in, it'll give you instant access. If you're on Twitter or Instagram, you can find us at Getting Tabled. It's not the most active, but it's something we're trying to use more all the time. And of course, without question, play more games.